Welcome back from the break. Now, just before the break, we spoke to Provincial Speaker, Speaker of the Provincial Parliament, Sharna Fernanadez, about her life and her upbringing and where that's all come from, and how that's led into her being the Provincial Speaker now. And I know before the show, we had a chat about some of the components happening in Parliament and some of the entertainment value it's given television recently, and how you take to all of that. Your job seems exciting, and you're doing well at it. Must admit. Tell us a bit about that.
Faizal, I think being the speaker in today's political environment is quite a hectic challenge.
Hectic or exciting?
It's exciting, it's challenging, it's motivating, but at the end of the day, I am concerned being the speaker at the level of engagement that happens within, we call it the House, but it's in the chamber. And when you talk about exciting stuff that has happened, you're probably referring to the State of the Nation address.
Yes, I am.
Where we, for the first time in the history of Parliament, saw armed police in the House evicting members of the House. And I'm not condoning any action, save to say that I'd never dreamt that I would see a day like the State of the Nation address. Similarly, that spilled over to our State of the Province address, and I must admit it was a very challenging situation on the day to have to manage what was seemingly a very volatile, hostile situation in a sense, where it took a lot of composure on my part, but I think the one thing that has stood me in good stead was my ability to remain calm through all of that. And I must admit it was really difficult to stay focused and remain calm with everything that was going on. But
if I may just ask you on that point of remaining calm, obviously that's what you set the tone for most things that happen as the speaker. So in the end of the day, if you are not going to remain calm, things are just going to start getting funny. And so I think at this stage we applaud you, because I remember watching the clip, and the fact that you maintaining that calm might have led to the unfortunate circumstance not looking that good because of the actions of other people, but at the same time, if you had to respond in a different way, we might have had a different outcome.
Well, yeah, I suppose one requires a certain level of tolerance. You also need to manage your stress levels in a sense that you cannot allow any one single thing to trigger you. So it is, I think there's a certain amount of EQ that needs to be practiced. You need to be able to sift through what is presented. You need to understand the context. And then you also need to consider the source. Understand that member's dilemma, or what ideology it is that is being proposed. My role as the speaker is to stay out of the political fray. I think the duty of a speaker is to remain fair, impartial, and then also to ensure that the dignity and decorum of Parliament and of the House is preserved and maintained. And that is key. And sadly, watching this fifth term of Parliament up at National, you tend to see that there is a level of disrespect almost afforded to the presiding officers. And I think we need to just step back and ask ourselves, when we were sworn in as members of Parliament, we took an oath. We took an oath to the Constitution, and we also signed what is called a Code of Conduct. And I think that those are guiding principles that we need to keep sort of top of mind. And it does seem as if there's a lot of grandstanding that could happen. I, though, as a speaker, would like to see the level of debate in the House. The quality of the debate needs to be improved, in a sense that, when I say improved, not with a negative connotation, but I think we need to start focusing on service delivery and nation building as compared to mudslinging and name calling.
I couldn't agree more.
I think currently the focus is on bad-mouthing the opposition, or it's almost like a tit for tat. And luckily last year I attended an interparliamentary union program in London, which focused on how to build parliaments and maintain. And I had the privilege of spending the day with the Speaker of the House of Commons, John Bercow, and being in Parliament at the House of Commons. And, you know, people often say we want to move from our colonial past. And I acknowledge that. But we also need to learn from that past. And you can see that the debate is vigorous. There's rigor. It talks to real issues on the ground. And I just don't think that we're there yet, you know?
If I can comment from a viewer point of view and from a citizen point of view, I think that if we take one step back in time and we look at if Parliament TV was around and people were watching Parliament TV, it would be about, okay, these people are taking decisions for us. How does it change our life tomorrow morning? Is it good or is it bad? But things have changed. People now take out some popcorn and a cold drink watching Parliament television because what's going to happen? Who's going to fight? Who's going to be arrested? And that's a funny thing, because in the end of the day, with all due respect to what you do, and you're doing that very well, but the people sitting around you are deciding our futures. And we as citizens would want to see that happening in a nice way. So I totally agree with you. And if I can speak on behalf of other citizens, we don't like what we've been seeing recently.
Well, I agree with you that I am concerned, because I think what is important, there are two components we need to build, and the one is active citizenship. We need to have an engaged citizen, and a citizen who understands the role of his vote, or what it represents, what that vote translates to, because that's important. And then the other aspect of that is your elected public representatives, who, in my view, we have a duty to the electorate. People have elected us by virtue of a system. They've put us in power, and it is incumbent on us to ensure that we deliver on that mandate. Currently, there seems to be a disconnect. We have the voters out there who come out every 5 years. They cast their vote, and then it's almost a situation where the public reps then manage the show for the next 5 years without considering the mandate that actually brought them there. There are very many good public representatives, let us not get that wrong. I do believe some of our public representatives are misguided in their actions, in that they project something completely different to what it is that should be. And I also think the media plays a huge role in what is communicated. It does seem as if the media, and we all know, sensationalism sells newspapers and everything else. So often when the media is in the house, it is almost like public reps play to the media's need. And maybe that is where we need to start differentiating and saying, is the media reporting on the core issues, or are they also just latching on to the personalities and the agendas or the programs that they bring to Parliament to want to make that work? Recently, we've seen a splurge almost of personalities in the media, and I don't know if that's right or wrong. I do believe that everyone has a public profile that they need to build, but I also do believe that as a public rep, you have a duty to maintain a certain level of dignity and decorum, and you need to be guided by the mandate that has actually taken you there. And I think sometimes we tend to lose sight of that in the House, where it becomes personal issues. And I watched Channel 408 last night, and I watched a recording of something, of a day's proceedings up at National, and it is actually quite alarming when you see the level of disrespect shown to the speaker or the presiding officer simply on recognizing people when they need to speak and when not. I mean, before you had to say, I recognize the honorable, and that member would stand up and speak. These days, people just jump up, they point their fingers at the presiding officer, they shoot off their mouths, and there is really no respect. And if Parliament is the highest level, what example are we setting to our citizens out there? And again, I come back to saying it is our duty to ensure that we display exemplary behavior rather than destructive behavior that encourages ordinary Joe citizen to say, well, if they can do it there, we can do it out here.
Correct, and I think that's the mindset that's going to become a problem. You mentioned a very important thing, and that's the mandate. That mandate has been given by the people, and you represent the people. So how do you take that mandate forward, jumping on a desk? It's just unheard of.
Well, you know, sadly, it is not only in Parliament. I think the news in the last few weeks, we have seen a total lack of respect, a lack of tolerance. And I think in a country like ours, 21 years into a democracy, and I remember what we all bought into in 1994. We had this dream of the Rainbow Nation and how we were this role model to the rest of the world. I voted in New Zealand on the 27th of April in 1994. I was over there and I was so proud watching TV, CNN, Sky, all the different networks showing these people queuing, very proud South African citizens queuing to vote. And 21 years later, we have to ask ourselves, what has gone wrong? Is something wrong? Are we in need of repair? Have we lost sight of the Rainbow Nation? Or are we now this mosaic society? And how well do we deal with tolerance and respect for other people's perspectives and points of view? We live in a multicultural society, a very diverse country, and yet we cannot see eye to eye around the current flavor of the monthly statues.
Correct.
You know, I'm not going to say whether it is right or wrong, but my mind tells me what nation building is happening in breaking down statues, the debate, the dialogue. Where is that?
Correct.
We see some of the visuals of students jumping on tables and almost threatening, intimidating behavior. Where's the respect for the other person? I'm not even talking about the statue. I'm talking about real basic manners.
Yes.
When you speak, I will listen. But once we start screaming and shouting at each other, no one's going to hear because we're too busy screaming and shouting.
Correct,
So
yes.
I think we need to revisit, I don't know what you call it.
Is it the modus operandi?
The modus operandi, but what has happened to manners? You know, in the old days you grew up,
Correct.
when old people spoke, you had to say, excuse me, and you know, it's real simple things that many people take for granted.
That's why they call it civil society.
Civil society,
are we
how
just going to be
civil are we?
Are we just becoming society, or are we moving away from civil society?
And the great big question is, have we lost our moral compass? You know, if a nation is not guided by a moral compass, if countries, provinces, people, families, communities, we need something that binds us, and we talk about social cohesion. But at the core of cohesion is respect, is tolerance, is appreciating the other person's perspective or point of view, irrespective of whether it agrees with your way of thinking or not.
Correct.
So we need to be able to agree to disagree. And I don't see that tolerance any longer that possibly was displayed a couple of years ago.
Yes. Madam Speaker, as a point of order, we've reached the end of the show. I really appreciate you coming out today, taking time out of your busy schedule to inform our viewers exactly where you've come from and what your philosophies and ideologies are. I'm so happy that we understand the speaker behind the speaker.
Thank you, Faizal. I'm pleased that you gave me this opportunity. And, you know, I think what is becoming important is constant dialogue. We need to keep engaging. The minute you break down that conversation, once dialogue stops, then I think conflict and all the other things creep in. And I must say I have a great respect for you and your show, and I certainly hope that I could come back someday, because I think what is important, we need to educate citizens on the role of public reps so that people understand. The mayor does this, the premier does that, a councillor does this, and the speaker and members of parliament. And once we understand those roles, I think we'll be more equipped when it comes to the decision-making process. Because right now we have a huge portion of the population who unfortunately have not had the opportunity to get to grips and understand, we call it public education and outreach, but I think we need to do more outreach and public education in an effort to get an informed citizen.
Well, Madam Speaker, I think the deal is done now, and that is that, yes, I'm happy to have you back, specifically discussing those matters in the near future, and I take it that you'll accept that invitation.
Thank you kindly. You can be sure I'll be back. And thank you so much for the time you've afforded me today.
Thank you for coming on the show.
And I wish you well with your show going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker, Sharna Fernanadez from the Provincial Parliament, some very interesting, pertinent information for us as South Africans. Until next time, and she will be back. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye.